Hello and welcome to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. Of course, I am your host, Clay, and if I sound any differently as my camera malfunctions real quick, uh, because I have shifted my office space. I no longer have my own office. My daughter has stolen it for her own room. It is a sad day indeed. But thankfully, she is out of our room. I have peace at night.
Woo.
She is sleeping throughout the night. Or maybe Abby's just not waking me up and she is still waking up in the middle of the night. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, I do apologize if my audio sounds a little different and a little off. I'm still learning how the acoustics work in here. I'm probably going to be putting some stuff up on the walls. I'm definitely going to be putting stuff in those cubbies right behind me to kind of spice the view up a little bit for anybody watching here up on YouTube. But yeah, this episode is going to be very, very interesting because not only did we get one reveal, we got two. And that second reveal, we will keep a secret. But we are going to talk a little bit about news that has hit the internet for Star Wars. Then we're going to talk all about Thrawn because some people have had opinions. I know Travis has had opinions. I have stayed away from the Discord. I have stayed away from Twitter because
Oh, so you
I
don't even know what I think.
not necessarily no. I think I saw one little comment and then I shut off notifications because I needed to see the episode first, but also because of how much I despise Thrawn in the books, I needed to have my own opinion on this live action reiteration of the character. And I didn't want to be leaned in any other direction by somebody else's opinion. So I have not heard anybody's review whatsoever. So I wanted to keep my opinion my own. So I have kept I have been in the dark. I've been in the dark somewhat because, of course, Twitter is Twitter. People are going to throw out their opinions. So I do have some comments on those opinions, but we're going to talk about Thrawn. And before we talk about the actual episode, we will be talking about David's email because we did miss it last week. So we're going to talk about the email, we're going to discuss it, and then we will do the review for episode 6. So, Katie, out of the two news topics that we have, which one do you want to talk about first?
Three. We have three. I guess
Oh,
one is technically comics.
yeah.
So, all right. So, we have a couple announcements for some comics coming. The very first is another Revelations comic. So, if you remember last year, um, Star Wars Marvel did a Revelations to kind of talk about the future of Star Wars comics, aka hitting the next crossover, which is which was ended up being Dark Droids, which is happening right now. Um we do not get those issues month to month anymore, so just kind of we'll get to it when it kind of comes out on Marvel Unlimited and the trades and stuff. But we have a Revelations 2023, and this is due out December 20th. But this encompasses the Star Wars run. So we have Princess Leia, Luke with his yellow lightsaber, and Lando, and a mysterious cloaked figure down here at the bottom. We also have Mace Windu, Thrawn, Darth Vader, of course, and Keith Trennis, all with like this Shatterpoint look surrounding Jabba the Hutt. Where do you think we could be going with this? Because it's a short story basically for each comic run. All of the authors for the comic runs are doing things.
Well, one thing that I have been very intrigued by is that the Huts have been around for a very long time because uh, one thing that you'll notice uh, is that even in our High Republic era, the Huts are mentioned. So they have been in some sort of power for a very long time, which means that they could be a connecting dot to many people's story within the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
So if Jabba is front and center, I think that would kind of make sense. Um, which, of course, there probably is a book like this. So please correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm surprised there hasn't been kind of an anthology story with Jabba at the centerpiece, or have Jabba as the protagonist of the story, and him like move like not necessarily Jabba, but maybe the Hutts as a whole as the protagonist. I'm
Um,
surprised there hasn't been a book or a novel or a short story or something like that.
so we do have so in Legends you have Tales from Jabba's Palace, which is basically kind of like what we saw at the beginning of From a Certain Point of View returns.
Yes.
Almost.
But we also
Um,
have we have a comic of that just recently that kind of stole that title. I think it was
yes, as
a
part of the Return of the Jedi.
yes. I can't remember who wrote. I think it was Guggenheim that wrote that issue, to be honest. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't been keeping up with it because I'm waiting on the trade. So,
okay, okay. Yeah.
because they're collecting all of the Return of the Jedi shorts, one shots into
Oh,
um
okay, cool.
a
Yeah.
trade. Um, yeah, I would be interested to see because we've gotten the Hutts in the High Republic, but we haven't seen Jabba the Hutt in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it'll be curious to see if maybe he's going to show up in the Marvel Phase 3 comic, which is why Keeve is a part of it. Um, Mace Windu is another intriguing addition to the cover. Like, what are we going to be getting prequel wise? Because we already know we have the Living Force coming. So are we going to be getting another potential Mace Windu comic? Um, and then Thrawn. Thrawn being on here is really intriguing because the only comic that we've seen in canon so far for Thrawn is actually the Thrawn novel adaptation.
Yeah.
Um, so what is he gonna be in?
I am curious to see if they did this knowing that, Thrawn was going to be revealed in Ahsoka. And so the hype around Thrawn is going to be very high. And so, like, hey, we want to ride this wave. Let's go ahead and put him in here as well.
Do you think it would be like I can't remember who's doing the Darth Vader run right now, but do you think like the Darth Vader run is going to maybe adapt Thrawn alliances? Because that would be the next novel, and that's really the only case where I could see like tying Thrawn in, because obviously you don't want to go into the future with the comic because you don't want to overwrite the potential movie season 2 of Ahsoka, those kind of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So it would have to be in the past, and he's in the Grand Admiral uniform.
Hmm.
And you would also think if you were going future, especially knowing the way Lars Mikkelsen looks, and we'll get to that, but like you'd think you would like adapt to it to kind of get people used to the way he looks right now, maybe?
No, I will not go that far. Just because, like, even when you look at Luke Skywalker, especially in the most recent issues in this run of Star Wars, they look similar to the actors, but not exactly. You know what I mean? And so I think with the depiction of Thrawn, because he is so famously known as the strong jawed, broad shoulder, very stoic looking individual, I think they will always keep that. Again, we will have comments about the live action debut of Thrawn, which happened this week, yesterday to be exact. Uh, but I think Thrawn is a special case, um, especially when you look at his depiction in Rebels. It is so very far from what we see in this cover and live action. So there is
Um,
really three different depictions on what Thrawn looks like, and that's what tells me, oh, he's a special case.
yeah, it's a good point. I was just curious to see what you think if like they would go that far as going, oh, this is the depiction we get now. But as a lot of people on Twitter are saying, he's older, so we should change his appearance and he should mature. Like,
I'm sorry that you can only go so far with. Again, we will talk about it. We will talk about it.
I know. I know. Okay, so the other comic news that we got is a new Star Wars Visions comic. Um, and this is again going back to the Ronin, the duel. And in this case, uh, the author, oh my gosh, I can't. It's being stupid. The author Takashi Okazaki will be tackling um basically a prequel before the duel. So Okazaki actually wrote the duel, and he is writing the whole thing about the Ronin. And this is part of the ongoing new series of tales from comic creators that will kick off in November with Peach Momoko, um, inviting comic creators to put their own spin on the galaxy far, far away. Um, so
So
I'm
here's the
interested in
thing.
this.
Here's the thing that's going to be really interesting. Takashi Okazaki wrote the duel, but
Mhm.
he didn't write Ronin.
Yes.
I need to go back to the novel of the Ronin to see if there is any collaboration with its author and Takashi. Because if there wasn't, it might get a little awkward in this now continuity of the duel. You know what I mean? Because one thing that we really enjoyed about Ronin was that I can't remember her name, but the author of the Ronin.
Emma Mieko Candon.
Yes, Emma, she created this really kind of fantastical version of the Force and like the way people use it, and like there was death and resurrection and all sorts of different things. And it might turn me off to the idea of like, we're not going to be getting that story.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Emma goes with the they pronouns, by the way.
Yes, sorry.
And so they got to write the sequel, whereas this is a prequel. So I think and I think in a comic form, the Force is going to be different than how you're going to write it on like a storybook page. So I think as long as Okazaki manages to hit what we get in the duel, I would be pretty happy with this.
They did Emma did write a sequel or a continuation because it's technically like the exact same time and then moves forward,
Yeah, you're right.
but they did also reference the past, which kind of moved the entire story
Yeah.
forward, so if this is a prequel, I feel like if they contradict, it may put me off to like, I'm still gonna give it a try. I think I will enjoy it either way. But of course, we as continuity nerds, we're like, it doesn't really match up. Is this another alternate timeline to, this all-encompassing like thing of visions anyway? So, if I need to read it as its own thing, that's what I'll do also, which is totally
Yeah,
fine with me.
for sure. Uh, so the last bit of news we have is actually from it's that movie news. Which do we believe this is going to be made at all whatsoever? If
We'll
freaking
see after
Twitter,
today, because negotiations are apparently hard underway right now.
this is true. This is true. Um, hopefully the AMPTP whatever the studios see reason. Um, so Stephen Glover we knew took over the writing duties on the Lando series. However, he was actually, if Bespin Bulletin can do the right thing, um, on Pablo Torre finds out Stephen Glover was congratulated by the host on landing the writing gig on Lando alongside his brother Donald. The writer quickly revealed that Lando is actually a movie and no longer a series. What do you think about this?
This is happening a lot. Uh, which, granted, I can understand why. Like this whole idea, especially this summer's box office, if you look at multiple movies, I mean, Barbie and Oppenheimer, they're the talk of the town. We knew that this was going to happen. The hype around the two were very, very big. Everything else was kind of subpar. And because of that, a lot of these bigger studios took a hit at the box office. So they still want the theatrical experience to be had for a lot of these different films, especially with the idea of Star Wars. Everybody was super excited when Ahsoka brought Star Wars back to the theaters, but it was only for 30 minutes. So it's
50 minutes. Give it its due.
yes, 50 minutes. But still, I think they do want, we had that crazy, well, not crazy quote, but the very surprising quote from Kathleen Kennedy at Celebration. We are wanting to eventicize whatever word she created, the theatrical experience with Star Wars. So they're wanting to bring Star Wars back to the theaters. It's not surprising that this happens, but for me, my one worry, yes, Donald Glover is a hit. I think anything that he is the face of, people are definitely want to go see it. But I think there's a lot of people that still react in a cringeworthy way, not me, but some, when thinking about Solo. So when they see that Lando is coming to theaters, I don't think it's going to have people reacting in the most positive way.
Which is why I'm wondering if this is not like a theatrical movie. What if it's a special event or special presentation on Disney Plus? So it's technically a movie, but also just they haven't really
It
like
would be the first in Lucasfilm to be a movie releasing on Disney Plus.
yeah, but I just don't see because there's so much content around Lando right now. Like he's a main focus in the current issues for the Star Wars run. Um, you have oh my gosh, I can't remember anything. You have the solo movie, obviously you have Last Shot, and you have the two prequel-ish Lando comics to Solo.
Yeah.
So where are you going to put that where it makes the most sense? Is it going to be pre-Shadow of the Sith, but like still post Return of the Jedi? Like that's the question that I would have in this case is where does this make the most sense? Because the other thing that makes me happy about this move, honestly, is does this enable Billy D. Williams to actually come in and do more of a role in the Chronicles of Lando Calrissian?
Yeah, because we always had the theory that this was going to have him as like more of a narrator talking about the Chronicles, and then Donald Glover would be the one acting everything out.
Yeah,
Um,
to be able to tie in those two iterations.
yeah, I think it would make sense. Um, and honestly, let's be completely honest, with the price tag of both of them, I think it needs to be a movie. I think you could probably get away with, you know, paying Billy a little less than Donald, but just for the experience on the Star Wars franchise as a whole, I think Billy would want to probably try to negotiate a larger price on him.
Yeah, especially getting up there in age, like you want to do it for the right price.
Yeah.
Um, Andrew is in the chat. Hello there.
Hello, Andrew.
Okay, we are about to get into David's email talking about Ahsoka episode 5.
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna start with this first one because he sent two. Um, so he said, I knew my theory was too crazy to be true, at least probably at this point. Talking about Balin being an Anakin who didn't go dark.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say except my initial opinion of episode 5 was major frustration. I've only watched it once at this point, but know that I need to view it again and will do so very soon. I didn't like that Ahsoka had what is essentially a quote dream sequence. I didn't like that it didn't seem like a visit to the world between worlds. I didn't like that the ending explanation was that they were going to hitch a ride on the Purgles. Why didn't you do that initially when Ezra first disappeared? I knew I needed to sleep on it because the episode had so many great things that I did enjoy. I'm sure you've mentioned them. I'm very much come around to the point Ahsoka actually having been in the world between worlds because she did die, like Harry Potter did, going to King's Cross. And yes, so you asked how my sister who hadn't seen Rebels is doing, and she said the same exact thing. The King's Cross reference. Before coming back alive by choice. Did y'all mention how when some Jedi die, they disappear? Obi-Wan, Anakin, other Force ghosts, and that's probably what she did as well. And actually, Mike Chin, I think it was Mike Chin, actually said that it was either Obi-Wan or the Anakin story that he wrote in From a Certain Point of View Returns. He was picturing they were in the world between worlds and just couldn't like actually say that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
um, and she said, I'm really shortening my email because it's been a busy day, but I can't wait to hear your initial thoughts. The set, do you have anything to say on that one before we get
Well,
to the
the
second one?
second one he reiterates some things. So go ahead and read that one, and then we'll talk about it.
Um, he said, no worries about not getting to my email. It just gives me more time to clarify. He also called us sweet and funny, and thank you, David. We appreciate it. Um, My initial irritation at this episode has long since subsided, though I am still frustrated at the inconsistency in how the world between worlds is used. Here are some of my own pros and cons. Con, I wish the episode hadn't felt like a dream sequence. Pro, I like that I can headcanon my, quote, King's Cross death into this. So I'm thinking Ahsoka actually died and faded into the Force, just like Obi-Wan, Anakin, Yoda, Luke, and Leia, and then he said did Ben, and yes, Ben Solo did.
Yes.
And now I'm rereading and seeing you said Obi-Wan. Sorry, that's just the way my brain's working right now. She just had more to do, so she came back to the world of the living force. Con, I wish Ahsoka had somehow explained the Purgle's trek. Why do this now? Why not do it before? If it was because they hadn't seen them, I'm fine with that. But until they say it, I don't like that this seems like something they should have done to go after Ezra many years before. Pro, freaking Anakin Skywalker. Pro, Rex. Pro, live action Clone Wars. So, to the Purgle point, I have to wonder if it was just kind of a moment of clarity on Ahsoka's end. Plus, they didn't really know how to get in contact with the Purgles. Or maybe they did use the radio frequency and just they never came back. We know that Ezra had a good bond with the Purgles, and so maybe getting to Sados and kind of seeing the Purgles in live action, in, like years later, managed to trigger something and them go, okay, maybe we can hitch a ride, kind of
Well,
thing.
not only that, but like they seemed in Rebels very surprised to even see the Purples. In this current episode this week that we will talk about, they have a conversation of like how Purgles are like not necessarily like what's the right phrasing? A story of like a thing out of a fairy tale, but it's like something of old, something that they don't see very often.
Yeah.
And here in Ahsoka, in episode 4 and 5, we see that there are tons of Purgle here on this planet or around this planet. So, and this is what the first time that we're hearing of this planet in
Yeah.
all of Star Wars. So it can be headcanoned that this is a nesting ground of the Purgles that a lot of these characters that we've been following in Star Wars aren't really familiar with on any star map. And it just so happened that they came around to this planet because of the current mission that they are on.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's where I think with that. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like they didn't think about it. I just would think like they really couldn't get to the Purgles in order to see if it was possible.
Yeah.
Um, so the next thing on his list, he said Khan, still no Thrawn. I like that it may be following the Mandalorian structure of bad guy comes in the last two episodes, but come on, Pro. I really like Ezra being found and being mastered to Jason. It's a good way of poetry rhyming. It beats the alternative of going to Luke's to be trained. Don't all the Padawans get killed by Ben? I don't know that story well. So, not all of the Padawans get killed by Ben when he goes dark. Also, with the fact that um so Jason would be about 13 years old at this point because I this is taking place 13 ABY, 11 ABY to 13. But basically, he is the same number of years as we are in the timeline.
Yeah.
Whereas whereas Ben was born a year after Return of the Jedi. So the age difference, I don't think Jason would be a Padawan at Luke's Academy at the time where Ben went dark.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers that question. Um, So his last point, he said, Khan, I'm interested to see where they'll take this. There's only so much I'll personally accept non-force sensitive individuals being sensitive to the force. I sort of get Sabine being trained by Ahsoka. Being a Jedi can be a way of living. Many non-Jedi lived or worked at the temple, right? Isn't that a Clone Wars episode? But I don't think that Hera should be able to hear the lightsabers fighting in the waves. I'm not sure what sort of symbology or themes we're getting with this, but there are established rules with the Force, midichlorians, non-Force users, etc. And I won't get into all of that. There's also the issue with her maybe not even being in the world between worlds. So what is Jason hearing exactly? And I think you could go about this one of two ways. I think you like Ahsoka is actually present and but she's kind of having like a fight with herself because I mean that's ultimately what was happening in the world between worlds was she was fighting with herself.
And we did end up talking about that. We had mentioned if it's not the world between worlds, what was it? You had mentioned that. And so there was like a little bit of, again, head canning, like the possibility of like as she was in the water, kind of having a force vision knocked out unconscious, but also like actually bringing out her lightsabers and clashing them together, which sounds really silly now that I actually acted out and stuff. But like, I mean, I guess, but I am on the side of David. Um, when talking about this episode in particular, I had agreed with Travis that it was a little bit lackluster. There was a lot of potential with the episode that fell short. Um, so I agree on a majority of these things when it comes to David's opinion. The only thing that I will disagree with is he said pro live action Clone Wars. And for me, one of the things that I had said that we had said before the premiere of Ahsoka was if there was going to be a flashback to the Clone Wars era, it needed to be new footage, which we didn't get. The only quote unquote new footage was when it was all cloudy and dusty, and there wasn't even really any setting because you couldn't even place it anywhere. A lot of people on TikTok, on Twitter, on YouTube, they were all headcanoning and making very estimated guesses. on where that was. And then, of course, we saw the Siege of Mandalore, which we had already seen in Clone Wars. And that was something that I didn't want to see because I had already seen it before. And
But
one thing,
and we had this conversation. I'm not gonna say it. We had this
well,
conversation.
one thing that I think is a very big talking point when it comes to entertainment that my uncle is a very big proponent in because we always talk about it in the sense of the DC animated movies and then DC movies. And I think it needs to be a conversation, especially with the Star Wars franchise, is a lot of people talk about Clone Wars and Rebels and they think, oh, that's a kid's show. That's not important. And we have seen critically acclaimed cinema animated movies, and people don't bat an eye to it. But when it comes to franchises like this and talking about Clone Wars and Rebels, they have a completely different opinion on it. Clone Wars and Rebels should be talked about on the same level of those of the movies in the same franchise. You should not
Yes.
talk about it in a different category. So when comparing the two, when saying, oh, I need to see something different, it's because I am looking at them at the same level. And so it's like, yes, it is a flashback because it is an actual timeline thing, but you had the opportunity to show me something completely new and you chose not to. I think the only way you get away with that is if you had shown me a live action adaptation of the Ahsoka not Darth Vader, Ahsoka Darth Maul fight. I think that's the only way you get away with it because then you go off of the entire hype of seeing live action Maul again since Solo.
I don't know. I like the way they did it. I don't know if I would have liked seeing them all because I think, again, we've talked about this with like some of the fights. Like we talked before Ahsoka came out, we were theorizing like, what if we get the Ahsoka Darth Vader fight
Yeah.
again in live action as kind of a flashback, knowing that Hayden was coming, and we talked about it, and it was like, well, like we want like those really good lightsaber fights to be able to stay there because they deserve that spotlight where they're at and not just to be retread constantly. So
Well, I also
I
want I want to bring something up, and this is a huge potential spoiler for the future of Ahsoka because it might also just be a complete like nothing burger, but people are putting tinfoil hats. I don't know if you've seen this all over TikTok or Twitter or
am
even
not on TikTok,
Instagram.
so
Okay, so I don't know if you've seen this on Instagram, but they've been showing a lot of the behind the scenes of the filming of Rosario Dawson and Hayden in the world between worlds, quote unquote.
yes.
Have you seen what's in the background of those photos?
No. Because I saw it was out, but I didn't look.
Okay, so do you want me to say it or not to?
Go for it.
Okay, so there is a photo where you see Hayden and Rosario Dawson, and in the background, kind of high up, like if you're looking at like my camera, kind of like right here, comparatively behind them, is like some sort of cage. But it looks like more like a standee where it's like a puppeteer thing, and Grogu is there.
Interesting.
And so a lot of people are like, oh my God, there's going to be another scene with Anakin and Grogu in the future of Ahsoka episodes. I don't think so. And that's why I said it's a potential spoiler because if something like that legitimately happens, I don't mean to spoil it for anybody, but I just needed to talk about it because I thought it was absolutely crazy. Why would they even have that? But then in my head, I'm also thinking these things were probably all filmed at the exact same time
Yeah.
inside the freaking
Volume.
volume. So they probably had an extra Grogu puppet just sitting around. And
They
so
probably have it for fun as like a Grogu is always watching you sort of thing.
And I could see Lucasfilm doing that. Like, honestly, I honestly can. So if people have seen that on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, like, take it with a grain of salt. Like, I just needed to bring it up because if it does happen, I think it would be interesting and cool. There is now a huge theory because of the ending of episode 5 going into episode 6 and looking back at Mandalorian season 3 that Grogu, when seeing the Purgles while they were traveling in hyperspace, that he potentially sensed the presence of Ahsoka. Now, you say, now that we have seen the episode, you are leaning more into this being a legitimate possibility.
Well, and not necessarily because of the episode, but I think it's more of what Jordan Mason from Cinelinx put out. He said, um, like if he actually witnessed Ahsoka leaving the galaxy, which timing wise would actually make Carson Tiva's insistence on a new threat in Mando season 3 make more sense. That was one of our biggest questions about Mando season 3 was what is he talking about? Like we all assumed he was talking about Thrawn, but he
Mm-hmm.
never actually said Thrawn. So like
Yeah.
he could have been talking about something else. He could have been talking about the final order coming in because we know like Leia is very insistent like the empire is still building. They are trying to make a comeback. So he could have been in on that. But that makes so much sense to me. So if like they lined it up to where Grogu is seeing the Purgles and is noticing Ahsoka is there, I think that's genius on Lucasfilm's part. And ultimately, it makes a whole lot of sense because we know Ahsoka takes place at the same time as season 3.
Yeah. Yeah. I I think it might just be coincidence. Um until like something is confirmed. And that's something I think I've said it before here on Star Wars Alliance, but me personally, I do not like when writers or directors or any kind of creator of these movies and shows come out of the woodworks after the fact and be like, oh yeah, this is what happened in between the scenes or behind the camera or like in between the panels. It's like, no, if it wasn't there in the first place, stop reading fan theories and just agreeing with them. Like, that's one thing that I absolutely like. Because for me, what made Endgame a little less enjoyable was the Russo brothers coming in the weeks after, like, oh, this is what that meant, or this is what this meant. Oh, and this is really what's supposed to happen in between these scenes and this scene. And it's like you're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. And for people to do that with with these franchises, it gets things really really complicated when talking about timelines and stuff. So for me, I think it's just a coincidence. There's plenty of Purgle to go around, as we have seen.
Yes.
So I think if you want to write a comic, or if you want to, now that Ahsoka and Mandalorian season 3 has come out, if they do another adaptation or continue the adaptation of Mandalorian and they just add a comment that Grogu senses something, kind of head canoning or leaning towards the idea of him sensing Ahsoka, then yes, I will lean towards that.
And I think I would totally be on your side with like, oh, it's just a coincidence if this wasn't the Mandoverse. Like,
True. That is also true. I get that.
so yeah. Um, I had one thing to say with David's email. Sorry, my mom is blowing me up. Hi, mom, if you're listening to this, which you're not. Uh, um, okay, so David said, I'm not sure what sort of symbology or themes we're getting with this, but there are established rules with the Force, midichlorians, non-Force users, etc. I would argue, and this is what the great Ryan Johnson said about the Force. There are no established rules. about the Force.
I was gonna say I think that kind of like because famously I think we all know as individuals that are obsessed over this franchise is that George Lucas is the god, is the master, and Filoni is the apprentice. That's the big joke that everybody has, right? It's like, oh, Filoni knows all because George taught him. And when it comes to these rules and the universe that we all know and love of Star Wars, we see it constantly changing. Uh, and I think with the like, because for one, a lot of these conversations around the Force, the midichlorians, and everything else, it's never talked about in Star Wars. We are the ones that talk about it. We
Mm-hmm.
are the ones that overly obsessed about it. We are the ones that take a source of information from these movies and warp it and twist it and set it in stone and say, this is the way the universe now has to work. Those established rules are from us, not from the universe itself.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
All right. So, David, I hope that answers all your questions. Um, your cons. Not that you had questions, just like
Our
I hope that
yeah, you said you wanted to hear our thoughts, and those are our immediate thoughts. But we do have immediate thoughts on episode 6 of
yes, and
Ahsoka.
Andrew said it himself. I can't believe we got live action Thrawn and Ezra in the same episode. And Andrew, I'm going to take that and run with it because we have got to talk about Thrawn first so I can get what some people have called petty things out of the way to talk about the rest of the episode.
Okay.
Lars Mikkelsen was a terrible casting choice for live action Thrawn. And I am not body shaming the man. I have seen some people on Twitter say that. I'm not body shaming the man. He does not have the presence to accomplish Thrawn as a character.
He's not the intimidating individual that I saw in Rebels. And you cannot tell me that age takes that away because the performance, I think, was good. Mickelson took the character as he knows it, as he portrayed it in Rebels, and said, hey, I'm going to put that on screen. He did that. But his presence alone does not bring the vibe of Thrawn.
Thank you. And that, like, I close my eyes and I can put myself in an episode of Rebels with Mickelson voicing, like, we are in a brand new
But
season of animated Rebels. I hate Rebels Thrawn. Let's get that clear. I hate Rebels Thrawn. So
I love
that's your
Rebels Thrawn,
comparison.
everybody.
If
So
that's your comparison for how this Thrawn was supposed to go, is it's not my comparison because Thrawn Thrawn is almost 30 years old. The book came out in 1992. So I think he's 31 now. Thrawn is 31 years old and you cannot tell me that we could not accomplish like a menacing Thrawn. And so this is why I asked you if you had seen anything that I had put in the Discord because
I know that you
Taylor.
and Travis and Taylor were kind of going back and forth, but I want to know specifically what were you guys saying?
So okay, this is like the biggest thing because like we said a lot about like the look and everything, and I brought up the fact that Disney could have easily bought a $15 like dark blue cream makeup palette and done like some contouring on the dude, and you could have got captured a very menacing Thrawn just by giving him a little more angles. Like the dude always has his eyebrows scrunched, but you know what I saw with Lars Mikkelsen? His eyebrows don't move at
They
all.
so that was one of the things that I noticed immediately when seeing Mickelson on screen was looking at, if you look at his other reiteration of the character, which this is supposed to be just the live action version of that version of the character. If you go back to Rebels, Thrawn doesn't emote a lot, but when he does, it is because clearly it's animation, and so you have to do it very well to begin with. But he emotes with his face subtly but noticeably.
Yes, and so like when he's getting new information, like in the last scene with, or like in, so I noticed there's two scenes in particular, the one with Sabine and then the one with Morgan. And those are the two I paid very close attention to because you have the enemy and then you have a friend. And we all know
Mm-hmm.
how like Thrawn kind of acts with both of them. And there is some information that comes out where like the Thrawn we know and love would like immediately go, "Excuse me," and like you would see like eyebrows raised, like a scrunch in the face, like just something.
And
And like,
again, Thrawn is supposed to be stoic. I think Mickelson probably tried to keep that a little too much on screen I think he
mhm.
needed to probably emote and show expression a little more.
And
Be, well, go ahead, go ahead.
I think even when he's talking with Morgan and the Great Mothers come out and say, "Well, Ahsoka is on her way here. She is riding the travelers." I think in that case, when Thrawn gets that information, like I I've always imagined Thrawn like going and taking up somebody's space to make them uncomfortable. And he literally stays in one spot and his face doesn't emote and he doesn't like Mickelson is not tall. And in Rebels, Thrawn is tall because he towers over people and kind of gets their attention now. So
One,
he has to do it in other ways.
I will say I do agree with you somewhat. I agree and disagree with you somewhat because one thing that I think was very noticeable about Thrawn, not only in the Legends novels that we read, but in Rebels, was the fact that he always had a straight face, so nobody knew what bothered him. Even when you clearly knew, as an audience reading between the lines, oh, Thrawn doesn't like that. But he doesn't show it. And I think that's a good thing for a Grand Admiral because he doesn't want to show weakness.
Right,
But
but there's ways you have to interpret it on
yes, yeah,
screen.
I
You
do
get
agree with
that
you.
in a book. You get it in a book, but you have to show it on screen.
But and for me, I think through the years of not having to deal with these characters, being in exile in a completely different galaxy, kind of only having to probably deal, but not even with Ezra, because we will talk about that. But like, I think it would have struck a nerve. Like, oh, I'm finally going back. I'm gonna run the Empire, and then like Sabine, I'm surprised his eye didn't twitch. Ahsoka, why isn't he angry? Like, and again, he did show that he was frustrated and annoyed because he says to Morgan, "Oh, could this be the recently deceased Ahsoka? Like, hey, you told me she was dead. What the hell's wrong with you? Why didn't you
Yep.
confirm with the body and all of these different things, right?" So there was something there. It just wasn't enough to bring me to bring me to like a convincing moment of like, yes, Lars is our Thrawn. At this point, crazy enough, I think I would have agreed with the idea of Taylor's Henry Cavill as Thrawn, you know? But we have Mickelson. My thing, again, his appearance, I think I'm not going to go as far as completely body shaming. I am going to do a little bit because I'm sorry. The man is how old? Nearing his 60s, probably? He's like 50 something. I know that for sure. And in here, like Mickelson's face is a very awkward shape comparatively to what a strong jawed Thrawn is supposed to be. because
Yep.
very awkwardly, Mickelson's face is very short, and then when his jawline goes, it like sinks in and goes
Yeah.
completely back to his neck, and it just looks very awkward. I'm
But
sorry.
I think you could also accomplish a lot with makeup. And that is a
Makeup,
huge
prosthetic,
fault.
like I understand from other, like, famously, you look at Looper with Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. They made they tried as hard as they could to make Joseph Gordon-Levitt look like a young Bruce Willis. Did they do it successfully? No.
Yep.
But it, quote unquote, worked. With this, give him a prosthetic jaw if you think it's not strong enough.
Yeah.
We talked about the idea of like a wig, a toupee, something to make that, like, that slick back hair look. Like,
Yeah.
this just didn't look like this. I'm
And
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get hate for this. This looked like a random individual trying to cosplay Thrawn.
it looked
This looked like a New York Comic Con cosplay Thrawn. That's what this looked
you,
like.
you know what that reminds me of is so at the end of the New Republic books, um, there is a guy who actually cosplays as Thrawn. And like the whole empire is in on this plan to make it seem like Thrawn has returned to the galaxy.
That's hilarious.
um, but yes, no, I totally agree with you. Um, like Thrawn is supposed to be a very fit individual, and fine if you go, okay, this is our perfect Thrawn, but you have to do something. I mean, like, I'm sorry, Mikkelsen is literally balding. Like, he does not have a hairline that is accomplished by the Thrawn we see in this video. So he is already wearing a wig. So you could not tell me that you could not have given him a little more hair just to like increase like dimension um in that. And again, I'm super pissed off with the $15, like I looked it up on Amazon last night. That was how pissed off I was because y'all, and I get it, like we get a lot of really good stuff in this episode, but Thrawn means so much to me. Like the Heir to the Empire trilogy, that was my escapist trilogy. That was like the fifth Star Wars book that I ever read, but it was my escapist trilogy. Like my paperback is well loved, like to the point it could almost fall apart, if we're being honest. Um, so Thrawn's portrayal in this means a lot to me. But you were curious what I told Taylor and Travis last night.
Yes.
So I called him timid. Um, I said he did not have the mannerisms for me. And I said he's timid as fuck. Um, and
So
Taylor said definitely not timid. He exhibited no fear, haha, only confidence. And Travis said performance wise, he felt like Thrawn, so gets a pass for me.
so a lot of people love the entrance of Thrawn. Um, we see the Star Destroyer come to the tower. Uh, he walks up. Um, I will say it was a little lackluster for me.
Yep.
I think it's cool, like the battle damaged Star Destroyer, because you have to remember, like, those Purgles got, they manhandled that Star Destroyer. So I
Yeah.
liked how it was still kind of beaten up and destroyed. Now, Katie, I can't remember if you actually finished this novel. I know you own it, but those, what people are calling Thrawn troopers, not stormtroopers, Thrawn
They're,
troopers.
they're officially called night troopers.
Okay, night troopers. Are those supposed to be the same troopers from Red Harvest?
That is the question. I literally said last night, I was like, are those zombie troopers?
My jaw dropped. Thrawn, I was like, okay, it's Thrawn. But as soon as I saw those stormtroopers, jaw dropped, because my immediate thought went back to oh shoot, I can't remember the Inquisitor's name now. Merrick or
Yeah.
Maroc or whatever his name was, because Night Sisters, these are the Night Mothers, and did they literally get every dead body from that Star Destroyer and resurrect every single one of them? That would be insane.
I want to come back to that because I had one more thing that I think you're gonna find hysterical with what I told Travis and Taylor.
Okay.
Um, I said, where is it? He's not menacingly calculating. He feels like a grandpa being called back into his rank because there's no one left. That's what he feels like.
God damn.
And Taylor said, "Whoa, too far."
I again, like this. Do you know what? And only some people will understand this reference or callback or joke. Uh, Mickelson's Thrawn looks like an Alex Ross rendition of Thrawn. And the reason why I say that is famously, Alex Ross is a comic book artist. If you look at every single one of his pieces of art, it looks like elderly individuals cosplaying, um, on almost every piece of his art. Um, and that's what Thrawn looks like here. I'm not going to apologize for that. It's just the way Mickelson is in the show. I'm sorry. Um,
Yeah, and he doesn't present well at all, I don't think. Um, okay, but I
because
that
even I will say this, and again, it may be because of the growth of Sabine, but the Sabine Thrawn interaction, it almost felt like Sabine was like, "So what? You're here, like what?"
yeah.
Like
She's
there
not
was
scared at all.
exactly, and that may have been something that they wanted to direct and be like, "Okay, she has grown. She doesn't care about Thrawn anymore. She cares more about Ezra." Which, okay, I can agree with that somewhat. But Thrawn has always been this huge threat, this huge idea of like the Empire can be reborn through Thrawn if we are not careful. And for that interaction, I needed to see some sort of fear, some sort of intimidation, and there was nothing there.
Yeah, and you could like just something that kind of shows because Sabine doesn't look like she's made a mistake. Like Ahsoka warned her and was like, "We cannot have Thrawn come back into this galaxy," and Sabine knows this. Sabine has faced off with Thrawn with the Rebels crew, so you would think, okay, I'm gonna be like, "Oh crap, I screwed up." At least, at least, and Sabine is still like, "I'm going after Ezra. I don't care what any of you say," because Thrawn even brings up like when I leave, there's no way to go back because he doesn't know Ahsoka's coming yet.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm just not happy with like I feel like there could have been more menace, a little more panache, and I do think like some people might go, well, he's the villain. Why did he even let Sabine go? No, that's something that Thrawn would do. That
Yeah,
is
I
something Thrawn
genuinely
would do.
think, especially after we see what he is also doing with Balin and Shen, like that is totally something that he would do. Um, let's go ahead. I Do you have anything else on Thrawn?
No, that was it. Okay, so the night troopers. Um,
Yeah,
I was really worried that Enoch was Ezra.
it
Um,
crossed my mind. It crossed my mind, but like I was like, I think that would be too harsh for us. Again, if that's the case, and if it's the case that the Night Sisters resurrected everybody, then that would also mean that my theory could have also been true that Ezra was dead. And I didn't want that. So I was like, no, can't happen. That's not going to happen.
I liked the Japanese references that are continuing to come by because if you look closely, the stormtroopers, their armor has a bunch of cracks in it, and it's all painted with the gold and
Hmm.
everything, which is like the traditional Japanese repair method. I can't think of the name right now, but it again, another homage that I greatly appreciated. I also agree, Thrawn's entrance felt like garbage. um,
Like, I know that you're
yeah.
supposed to get the idea of, like, oh crap, that's Thrawn. Like, he survived. But it was kind of lackluster for me. Um,
I don't know if it was filmed poorly or like I just felt like it was taking too long. And I get it's a Star Destroyer, like the thing's massive, but also like why waste time on this? Because
and there's also the idea again. One of the things that we were really debating was, okay, how is Clay gonna react to, like, is this a Thrawn that knows everything, or is this a Thrawn that, whatever? He does mention he does mention Balin's background, like, immediately.
yeah,
Oh, you must be General Balin Skull, and so, like, all of these other things. It didn't bother me, and I think one of the reasons why it didn't bother me is because I wasn't intimidated by this Thrawn. Um, so that might have played a little bit of it. And Ronnie, we are gonna get to your comment here. We're slowly making our way there. We do get introduced to these creatures on this planet called howlers. I'm going to be completely honest. There is a moment when the hyperspace ring is making its way
to
to the
Peridia.
planet. Yeah, to the planet, and we see, as soon as they land and everything, we start to see, like, kind of the setting and in the landscape of the planet, and there's three animals sitting on this
I was
porch.
like, Loth Wolf.
I thought the same thing. And I was like, this is why Ezra's on this planet. It was all done by the Force. This is amazing. Like, I got super excited for a second. And then as soon as I saw the Howler, I was like, oh, that's probably what their native, like, dog, wolf breed thing is on
Yep.
this planet. That's crap. I, for a second, thought it was Loth Wolves, and I got really excited for a split second. Um,
um, let's talk about the Purgle graveyard real fast because you mentioned the hyper ring coming in.
yes. Balin, he explains to Shin that the Purgles come here to die. And as soon as he says that, the camera pans out of the ship and you see the skeletons of the Purgles.
Yep.
It's interesting. I don't know why. Like, if we look at all of the information that is presented to us, why on earth would the Purgles go to this planet? Are they only going to come to die?
Yeah.
Like,
So
like
this is
that.
what this is literally the
I'm so
this is literally the
confused.
discussion I had with Matt because Matt is always like very much a detail person and like whereas me I'm like I gloss over stuff. It's part of my skin reading capabilities. It's very bad. Um so for me I don't think they only come there to die. I think this is like a migration, like birds going from north to south. Um like completely. And they have a full route. And then this is just when they get comfortable, this is kind of where they can pass off. But clearly, we also know from the Rebels episodes that Hera hates Purgles and that, like, most starfighter pilots are like shoot to kill, basically, on Purgles.
Mhm.
So this is not the only place that they die.
Yeah,
This might just be where the Purgles peacefully come to die. Um, but the
true.
Night Sisters also.
Just the way they explained it with, face value information. I'm like, then why would the Purgle that is literally housing Ahsoka right now be on its way to this planet? Like,
Yeah.
it
Well,
it,
and like
it was it was just funny in my mind.
the other thing to consider, right, is like they wouldn't only go there to die because Morgan says that the Night Sisters actually rode the Purgles into our into the Star Wars galaxy that we know and love.
Hmm.
So it's just they take this migration path and they just choose to die here, I would think. Um because it's kind of like a peaceful planet. Like the the Great Mothers are there, but they don't really have like a spaceship. They have like a place for one to land, but we don't see anything. So it's like, how else are they gonna get up to get to a Purgle?
I also want to say the idea of the Dathomiri being like this, like very ancient civilization that was quite possibly the first settlers of the new galaxy that we know of as Star Wars to begin with. I think that's pretty cool. Um,
Yeah.
the Night Mothers are clearly a representation of the Fates. If people did not notice that right
Yep.
off the bat, they even talk about like the strings of fates have shown us or whatever. Very on the nose. So Dave Filoni, I don't know if you had anything to do with that, but you know, a little better on the writing. How did you feel? Because I knew some people probably audibly groaned at the opening of this episode because
I loved it.
when
I
when
loved it.
Ahsoka and Huang are talking, you know, they mention that these old stories of the Purgles, you know, and you know, Huang is like, "Oh, I still have those in my memory banks. Do you want to listen to one?" And you know, they kind of go back and forth, and Ahsoka gets upset, and she's like, "You know what? Tell me one of those stories anyway." And he's like, "Okay, in a galaxy far, far away, or long ago in
A
a
long
galaxy far,
time
far
ago.
yeah, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away." And I did the whole Leonardo DiCaprio like, oh, he did it, he did the thing.
And
But
then the title.
for me, I feel like there was just man babies all across the world watching this episode that audibly groaned. And I'm sorry, guys, it's Star Wars. I'm gonna quote Freddie Prinze Jr. It's made for fucking kids. So you gotta have fun with it sometimes. Uh so I thought it was fun. I'm not gonna say it was funny. I'm not gonna say it was the best writing in the world, but I thought, hey, this is a fun little gimmick that this is probably a once in a lifetime kind of thing that they can do. And they were able to do it. And I thought that was cool. Um so there's that. Uh we get the uh interactions with Sabine. Sabine
Yes.
is still trying to use the Force. Now, let's rewind all the way back when you and your sister were reviewing episode 4. Or was
Yes.
it episode 5? It was no
It was
episode it,
4. It was
it was
4.
it was episode 4. Now, your sister said that she believes that Sabine actually did something because of the audio cue in the episode. If
I
you
said
listen,
that.
was it you or I
I
thought it was
said
your sister.
that.
Okay. You had said that something actually was there because of the audio cue. If you guys go back to
Yes.
episode 4 to that moment where Sabine raises her hand, there is an audio cue that everybody knows that is used for the sound effect for the force push. It's there for a split second and then nothing happens. So you could assume, hey, there was something there. It just didn't affect Shin, right? Well, in this episode, she is being stuck as a prisoner, and then she's just like, you know what? I'm not going to be stuck here. I'm going to do something about it. She raises her hand, she focuses, things start to shake. We see the dust coming from the ceiling, and we're like, holy shit, here's another Rey Skywalker coming around, about to move an entire building. And then it ended up being, what was it?
The
It was
Chimera.
the Chimera. Yeah. So,
And I
do
don't
you,
think you hear the audio cue this
no, you don't
time.
audio cue for this one. You just hear the rumbling and you visually see everything shaking. So, they keep teasing. And of course, we've talked about the cup. The cup was a really big part of the
Mhm.
footage that we were not supposed to see. Um, do you
Matt and
think
I
it's
had a
going to
whole discussion over if like that's leaked footage or if because it was technically made to a specific part of the public, it is technically not leaked footage.
it's leaked
What would
footage.
your
It's leaked footage.
okay.
Anything recorded on a phone that is not supposed to be recorded on a phone in an event setting is leaked footage. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Um,
Okay.
do we still think she's going to be using the Force by the end of this season?
She's gotta be like I need the she's gonna have a big moment where Ezra's in danger and that's where she finally uses the force. And then the cup is like the end of the season, like Sabine's going back to training with Ahsoka. Ezra's got to figure out what to do with his life now, and Sabine just walks past the cup. It goes like, and that's what it shakes.
Here's a crazy thought. Here's a crazy thought. Absolutely crazy thought. What if? And I know people aren't going to like this because we're going to have a lot of MCU comments about Star Wars. What if Ezra can't use the Force? What if
I don't know
he
why
has?
he would have. Why would he
What
have
if
had it taken away from him or lost
not
it?
not taken away, but
I said or lost it.
it's it. So there's the famous line: "If you don't use it, you lose it." So maybe he hasn't needed to exert himself to use the Force. Maybe this is very simple living because, yes, guys, we're talking about him as if we've seen him. We have seen him in this episode. He does appear in this episode, in a very nonchalant way, by the way. But did he give up? Did he say, "There's no need for a Jedi on this planet"? Do I just live as a nomad with these creatures and just live a simple life?
I mean, but if you think about it, Obi-Wan did the exact same thing.
He did, and what did we see in Obi-Wan?
That he struggled to use the Force. He did
He's
not lose the Force.
I know he struggled, and that's what I'm getting at. What if we see a big moment where Sabine needs to use the Force, and the cup moving is at the end of the season when Ezra is getting back up on his feet?
I don't think that's gonna be him getting back on his feet. Like I think like because it's like we said with Obi-Wan. Once you get back on the bike, it's very easy to like get back in the practice with it.
True, and I think that's going to be a really big moment for us as fans is seeing Ezra be a badass. I'm not sure if he will be a badass in this show because this show is not about him. We need to remember that, people. He is just a plot device in this season. So
Yep.
lower your expectations for what's going to
Big
happen in the
thing,
next few episodes.
big thing for what we're gonna talk about next with him, his appearance and everything. Um, yeah, I because I also think that he's not going to struggle with using it in little situations where like it's like an everyday thing, like move the rock across the table, move the cup across the table.
Yeah.
Sabine is the one who struggled with that. So I can picture Ezra struggling when it comes down to the big battle. I can't picture him not being able to like use it with like a little moment.
Yeah.
So
Very true.
that's where I'm at with that. Okay, do we want to answer Ronnie's question or we want to talk about Ezra first?
Well, let's kind of intertwine them. So Ronnie's question is, how come Thrawn never went after Ezra after he settled down? Seems like he was just waiting around. I'm sure he had some spare time to mess with Ezra. Thrawn kind of mentioned, and he doesn't specifically say like I've been trying to get off this rock or anything or out of this galaxy. It is clear that his prime mission is to get back to the galaxy that he can be ruler. Because right now,
Hmm.
let's think of it this way: he is in a galaxy that nobody knows him. Nobody knows how destructive he is, how menacing he is. Like, to go in an unknown space and try to rule could be a very stupid move. And Thrawn knows this. He doesn't want to start from scratch. He wants to go where people know his name and shake in fear. That's what he wants.
Yep.
So he's going to go back. He wants to go back, knowing that is just as stranded as Ezra. Ezra is a side thought at this point because there's no reason for them to attack each other at this point. They're both stranded. You fight each other, exert yourself too much, you lose resources, and it becomes just nonsense at that point. That's my thought process.
Because the other question, and this is something that Matt brought up, and something that I was thinking about, is it has been 13 years, 11 to 13 years, whatever the timeline is. How does Thrawn still have fuel to power a Star Destroyer?
That's a good question. Never thought of it.
These are the things that I've trained Matt for. In this case, we were both thinking about the same thing because,
Well,
like,
I mean, let's this isn't the only planet in this galaxy, I would assume. Like, but then again, we don't know how advanced this galaxy is. Like, the whole
mhm,
idea is like Earth is not a part of the galaxy far, far away. That's
yeah,
that's the whole point of the tagline in the galaxy far, far away. It's not our own galaxy; it's a galaxy far away. So this galaxy, I would have to assume, or headcanon, or whatever you want to say, the Dathomiri Night Sisters. Like, there's other civilizations on this planet, not just the Night Sisters. We see it with the mercenaries that attack Sabine in the first place, and we see it from the nomads that are not harboring but living with Ezra. So, like, there are other civilizations. And one thing that I've always kind of wondered about the Star Wars universe and galaxy is you never get to see a planet when we visit it. You visit one city, you visit one town,
yeah.
you visit one village. And so, like, Coruscant is not just literally one city, it has a whole planet, right? And so, here on this planet, there's got to be a city, a village, something that is there that has resources. So that's my headcanon.
Yeah. I just don't know because I feel like Ezra, the other thing is that I have an issue with is like Ezra feels really close for somebody who literally says at the end of the episode, "Oh yeah, we move around all the time." Like
It's
feels
been,
really
like you
close
said,
to Thrawn.
uh, really close to Thrawn? What do you mean?
Like distance wise. Like
Okay,
he's like a couple miles from Thrawn.
true. Like, and again, I think I would love to see the moments after they exited hyperspace. I
Hmm.
would love to know what that week, what that month, what that year looked like. I don't know if
And
we will ever get it.
I wonder if we will get it. Maybe as like I I definitely picture there being a question from Sabine. So, how did you get away from Thrawn? And we kind of see, if not like them landing, but like what happened to split Thrawn and Ezra up.
Okay. Like, because I could also see a world where we don't see that at all. Um, we might get like a small explanation, or like it might be too traumatizing for Ezra, and he just like waves off the conversation. Um, so I'm not sure. Because for me, I think that it would be very hostile in the beginning, but of course, Thrawn being the tactician, the one saying, "Hey, if I'm going to get off this planet, if I'm going to learn where I'm at, if I'm going to learn how to get back to where I need to be, I need to reserve as much energy and resources as possible." I can see Thrawn doing that. He's going to see Ezra as a nuisance if Ezra keeps coming after him. But after 13 years, we clearly see that Ezra is not an individual that says, "Hey, I'm going to attack Thrawn every single day until he's dead." You know?
Yeah. And I mean, Ezra doesn't have any weapons, because we know like his lightsabers with Sabine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would not, especially if some of the theories about like, oh, the Force isn't usable on this planet, like only Night Sister magic is. I could see him
So
totally not
I've
being a threat.
seen that conversation go around. Not only because I think it was you and Matt had that conversation, and I've seen it be tossed around on TikTok and Twitter recently. There is no actual validity to the theory. It
Yeah.
would be a little interesting. Um, I can't remember if there was a comment in the Discord that said, that would kind of ruin the whole thought of the Star Wars idea of the Force lives in every single thing. Uh, like I was super afraid, and again, super afraid of something I shouldn't be afraid of because I don't think Star Wars would ever do this. But like, are they going to enter our universe? Is it going to be super meta? Are we going to see Earth? Are we going to see Dave Filoni, Kevin Feige? Like, it's stupid. Star Wars will never do that, people. You don't have to worry. But like, in a world where crazy obsessed fans are the ones writing these episodes, it probably would happen, and then that would be super scary. Um, I think that the Force is usable. Um, I am still interested to see this Night Sister magic as it was portrayed in Clone Wars to that degree, to that like menacing, scary, horror esque type of vibe because we still haven't seen it yet. We've seen Marak being, a gas pocket within a body,
Yeah.
and we've seen Morgan kind of use some stuff, and we've seen the Night Sisters use their little voodoo red light magic with this little droid things, and that's it. Like we haven't seen anything else, and we can only
Yeah.
assume that these troopers have been resurrected. We haven't seen any magic at face value yet.
Which is interesting to think if they have actually been resurrected because for me, Ron is not like the type of person to lie. He is the type to like exclude the truth, but like
Yes.
he does not purposefully lie. So he tells Morgan after he sends Balin and Shin after Sabine, he tells Morgan, "Oh yeah, we're gonna send two squads waiting for Balin's signal to go after Sabine and Ezra." Um, and Morgan's like, "Oh, should we send more?" And he says, "Our numbers have dwindled." That is my only thing with the Night Sister resurrection potential with the troopers. If your numbers have dwindled, wouldn't the Night Sisters just resurrect them?
Resurrect them. Yeah, that's true.
Because so that's where I'm lining up is I like the idea of the resurrected trooper, but also if they are resurrected, then why would the numbers dwindle? I just don't think that's something that Thrawn would say as like a excuse for to like not support Balin and Shin more.
True. True. It'll be interesting indeed. Like there are so many like it's funny. There's so many answers in front of us, but there's still so many more questions. We
Especially
finally have Ezra. We finally have Thrawn. We finally know where they are, but it's just like, what the hell happened? Who are they? Who are they? What's going on here? What's going on there?
mhm.
Yeah, a lot.
is especially when it comes to Balin and Shin. Like I feel like we got a little bit more background information on Balin, but also, what is this great power he's after? Like, why does he want it? Why does he want to end the cycle of the Jedi fall,
Okay,
Empire's rise?
so call me
And I know we keep
crazy.
saying we're gonna get to Ezra. We're gonna get there, I promise.
Call me crazy. Balin is reminding me a lot of Darth Bane right now. He is in
Yeah.
search for something that will end a cycle like the Sith were doing, you know, in that trilogy. He wanted to bring back the rule of two and change the way people viewed the Sith and all of these different things. Balin is reminding me of a Darth Bane. I'm not saying that he is a uh, uh, like a replacement of Bane within the canonical Star Wars line or anything like that, but like he's giving me those type of vibes. Um, his conversation with Shin was very interesting because uh, in Thrawn's mind, they are using Balin and Shin uh, to ends meet. Balin is using Thrawn and Morgan to ends meet. Like there is going to be a clash at the end of this season.
Mm-hmm.
And Ahsoka, Ezra, Sabine, I feel like are only going to be caught in the middle. Like they are the main characters, and it should make sense that this is an Ahsoka team, Rebels team versus Thrawn. But because of this new element that Balin is bringing about, I genuinely think it's going to become a Balin versus Thrawn thing, and Ahsoka and the team are going to say, okay, and I almost hate this, but there is a possibility of a Rebels Thrawn team up to get rid of the greater evil that is what Balin is cooking up.
I do agree he kind of feels like Bane, but just to point out for people who are like, "Ooh, maybe he is the canonical reintroduction of Bane." Bane has already been introduced in the Clone Wars.
Yes.
He haunts Yoda. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Um,
Yes.
I don't know how I would feel about that
It,
because because we already know that Thrawn is still he still needs to get back to the Chiss at some point to face the greater evil that the Chiss has been coming across and you'll read that book eventually. But that trilogy, not the book, the trilogy. Let's be clear now. um so to me I feel like that splits Thrawn in too many directions. Whereas he kind of needs to be focused on the Empire. For me, my feeling is that Balin is going to realize that Thrawn has set him up, basically.
oh, I think Balin
And
already knows.
oh no, I think we're going to see a Balin Ahsoka team up at the end of this. Like to
Really?
get off to get off Peridia, I think they're going to agree to like work together to get
So
off.
this was kind of my fear. Like your idea was kind of my fear because like for a very long time I feel like there has been this idea uh in media, in movies, television, animation, comics, that there should be no more bad guys, that the idea of evil is what evil really is, and that people at their root should not be evil. And so if that's the case, then like bad guys always have the ability to become good. I don't like that. I think if there's a bad guy in some sort of franchise, they are the bad guy, they are the bad person. um and I understand, like, oh, but what about Anakin and Darth Vader? And he came, he was, died as a Jedi, blah 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 blah. there are special cases for the telling of the story. But if you do it with everybody, it is not as special, and it's not as jaw dropping or like, you know, all inspiring or anything else. I want the antagonists to stay the antagonists. I want the bad guys to stay the bad guys. And
But
that's why
I don't think Balin and Shin are the antagonists though. That's the thing.
and you're right, because of the conversation that they had, which was really surprising to me when Shin, when they're all watching Sabine, you know, ride the howler off into the sunset, Shin goes, I thought you were to honor your agreement. Out of anybody lining up on that balcony, Shin is
Yeah.
the last person that I ever thought would utter those words. We've seen Shin as the angsty emo girl the entire season. And now she thinks about honor? Like, that was a little off for me. But when they talk in, like, out in the wild, and like you see that Balin is seeking something, whether that be knowledge, whether that be power or whatever. He has his emotions in check. Shin, she's power hungry. She is itching for something. You can tell by the conversation that they had. She's like, "Oh, and that's going to be us, right? Like we're going to take that power." Like it is so stereotypical for the master and apprentice of the Sith to have this kind of relationship, but you clearly see it, which is why I'm so dead set on thinking that Balin is going to be this third party evil doer, and that he is going to put a crux in the plans of Thrawn getting off that planet. And I'm not saying Thrawn is going to become a good guy to team up with Ahsoka and the rebels to defeat Balin. It is to ends meet. Like, Thrawn will still say, "Hey, we're going to help each other get off this planet and defeat Balin. But once I get back into our own galaxy, I am going to kill you. I am going to be the ruler of the Empire and all of this stuff." Because that is what Thrawn ultimately wants. Like, he is not going to have a complete 360 or 180 on his personality and be like, "Oh, I'm a good guy now. I'm a rebel." Like, that's not who Thrawn is. Not at
No.
all.
I don't I see what you're saying. I don't like it. I would not like it. I don't want to
I'm
argue
not
about it
saying
anymore.
I'm not
I don't
saying
like
that I
it.
like it. I'm not saying that I like it. I just get those vibes for what that conversation held with Shin and Balin.
I don't feel like there's enough information there to and like I watched it a second time, like going, okay, I am looking at Thrawn, um, and seeing his portrayal again, and I'm analyzing that, and I'm looking at the information Balin should do. So I was particularly paying attention. Like, I didn't get those vibes at all. So
Now, finally, to Ezra.
yes.
We get to Ezra, as I said before, in a very nonchalant way. We see that Sabine meets these, I keep calling them nomads. They're like these crab
The
like.
Noti.
The note, well, see, I think Noti is a language, not a people, because even the mercenaries that attacked Sabine, the subtitles said that they were speaking Noti. So, like, I don't know who the Noti are or what the Noti is, you know. Um, but I can, I for this conversation I can agree with calling them the Noti for now, just to give them a name. So the Noti, Sabine bumps into them, and one of them has uh, a rebel medallion carved
Mhm.
out of wood or something, um, which I thought was so cool. Like he was very excited, pointing to Sabine's armor and stuff. I was like, that's the sign of Ezra. Like he's and the fact that they were speaking Noti and then clearly said Ezra Bridger, I'm like, and for me, I thought, Katie, I thought that it was going to be that the Noti take her to the village. She looks around, and literally before the camera turns to Ezra, we just hear his voice and the episode ends. Like that's how I thought the episode was going to end. Because I kept on looking at the time and I was like, okay, like it's getting to the end here. I don't know how long the credits are going to be. I don't want to like look through the stream and like get something spoiled for me. And I legit thought that they were just going to tease us with a voice. Or I even thought they were going to tease us with like a camera pan and then like the background be like blurred out. So you would see Ezra, but not see Ezra. And then it would cut to black. Like that's what I thought it was going to happen.
See, I knew they were going to reveal Thrawn and Ezra in the same episode. Like that was my gut feeling the whole way through. I was like, when
Really?
we get Thrawn, we're gonna get Ezra. So I do feel like, however, and don't get me wrong, I was jumping up and down. I don't feel like there was enough fanfare
Yeah,
for
so
the
I wanted
reunion.
to go back to I think it was actually Daniel RPK said it earlier today or last night, and let me bring up his quote. He says that the Ezra reunion was a bit disappointing. Even if you haven't watched Rebels, they made it clear how much he means to Sabine, so I expected a more touching scene between the two of them. And it was very much like, here you go. Here's Ezra, Sabine, him, yay, let's move on. Like, it was not like a big moment. I don't think that big moment happens until, which is odd because there was always like this flirtatious type of relationship between Ezra and Sabine.
But then they defined it at the beginning of the show as you were all in Ezra's hollow to Sabine. You were always like a sister to me.
Yeah, which is very, very weird. I still, I I'm headcanoning that out of this show, by the way. But like I don't agree with it, but I feel like you won't get that big fanfare until Ezra sees Hera. I think that once that reunion comes around, because it'll be like this somber moment for fans as well. Like, one of the last moments that they had was when Kanan died. And like,
Yeah.
it's been all these years and it'll be like, I'm sorry that I abandoned you, but I did what I had to type of thing. So I think, and I think also that is when we will also finally get Zeb. Like
Yeah.
Zeb will randomly just pop out of nowhere on the last episode with Ezra and the whole group.
I I agree with that. I don't think he'll pop out of nowhere. Like I think Ahsoka's gonna send a transmission and be like, I've got him, and Hera will pull Zeb away and go, we gotta go get our boy, kind of thing. Um yeah, I and I think this is the downside of putting this reunion in the Ahsoka show. And I know the Ahsoka show was like the way they did it was always meant to be Rebel season 5. But I just think they got downplayed because they're not the point of this show. The point was to move everybody else along while Ahsoka takes the time to get here, basically. Um, and so I also think that Sabine needed to be honest because I feel like I would have felt more emotion with the reunion if Sabine had been like, yeah, I came here on a big hyperspace ring that's going to get thrown out of here.
Yeah, the idea of her not mentioning, because I know why they did it. It's the very classic like, oh, this is what's going to bring tension and chaos and cause problems in the future episodes, is like, hey, I found you, but we're stranded and we're going to have to stay here forever. Like, it's because I also think there's no purpose in it because Ezra kind of already thinks he's stuck there forever, but the idea of seeing Sabine gives him hope that he is going to leave. So like I can also see why he like she wouldn't want to tell him because like, oh, I don't want to, just take all your hopes and dreams down in this very touching moment type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
I
think.
and I get it, but also like I just imagine more emotion coming out because it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's just a matter of when. And like you said, it was probably done this way to build tension. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
um, but I mean, overall, like I really enjoyed the episode. Like, and I'm not gonna bitch about Thrawn in the next two episodes. I promise. Like, I got all my bitching about Thrawn out. Unless there's gonna
Now,
be
I might bitch and complain if he decides to learn anything and everything within like the first 5 seconds of the episode. I'll be
and
pissed
become
off.
menacing. What do you think he's gonna say when he finds out that Anakin Skywalker was Ahsoka's master? Because he asks, "I want to know everything about her. I want to know her master, home
Like,
planet."
and that was the, I think, on purpose for fans to be like, oh, is there going to be another mention of Anakin and all of this stuff? So we have learned through the canonical story of Tarkin and everything else that Anakin is a very well known Jedi of the Republic.
Well,
The
and Thrawn knows that Anakin is Darth Vader too.
Yeah, and
So
that's a big thing is with Thrawn knowing the identity of Darth Vader, knowing Anakin, we also know that kind of Thrawn doesn't underestimate his opponents, but at times he has kind of underestimated the rebels in the show Rebels. Um I think it's going to give him pause. I think this will really be something that he has to think about. Um, and quite possibly even try to avoid Ahsoka because of the identity of, or the thought of Anakin's apprentice coming after him could mean trouble.
yeah, for sure. Um, so yeah, what is your rating of this episode?
This episode I really enjoyed. Also, the comedy in this episode, top notch. The Howler, it's fugly, but he's adorable. Um, like the whole scene where she like gets mad at him, like you bailed on me, like you abandoned me, blah blah blah. Get back over there, and like he runs off, and then like this
Yes.
it stays on that scene. I even put my finger across the screen, and then he just like starts running back to Sabine. It was great. I love the Howler. Um, I think a little bit of a generic name for a creature like that, but it is what it is. You gotta kind of work with what you gotta work with. Um, Still top notch. Um, I like the idea and the spookiness of the Night Mothers, the Red Harvest Thrawn Troopers, as people are calling them, were very spooky. Love that. That's the biggest jaw dropping moment of the episode for me. Um, and the A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far Far Away was just a little cherry on top for the episode. I would give this an 8, a solid 8 out of 10 for now. I think on possibly a second view with all of my like bitching and complaining about Thrawn and kind of the nitpicks, I could go higher, but for now that's kind of where I'm setting.
Yeah. Um, I David Tennant has worked in audiobooks before, so now I kind of want there to be a Hugh Yang audiobook that he can narrate.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I know, right? I want to see it. even if it's just like because Tom was talking about how they want to celebrate like the 50th anniversaries. Like, come on. Like he was there for the Doctor Who 50th anniversary. Like just make it happen. Just make it happen.
I would love that. I would absolutely love a either a hewing anthology or because again, Mike Chin introduced hewing to the Star Wars galaxy in a blue box. Like if you want to tell that story and have David narrating it as well, would absolutely love it.
Yes. 100%. For me, this one last night was at an 8. On the second watch I did today, 7.5. It just like I'm happy with elements of the episode, and overall, I'm happy with the way the story went. I have no qualms with the plot. I just have some qualms with the way Thrawn is handled. Thrawn is big for me. Thrawn is like 1.5 points. Um, and then I think rewatching the Ezra Sabine reunion, I'm disappointed with how it was handled. Other than that, loved the episode. So,
Nice.
all right, are we ready for book club?
I think we are ready for book club. And for me, always trying to remember what stories are what, I brought up the Del Rey Star Wars account that has all of the summaries for each and every
Yeah.
story. I believe we were on, let's see
The
here,
man who
one,
captured Luke Skywalker.
the man who captured Luke Skywalker. Yes. Uh,
This is by Max Gladstone, and it is about the character Egar.
Yes, and I can actually read the summaries so that way people kind of know everything. So it says Commander Egar gazed up, or is this a quote? Or I think this isn't a
It's
summary.
a
They're actually
quote from
quotes. Uh,
yeah.
so I won't read it, but it just reminds me what the story is about for me personally. I like this story. Um, it kind of gives you because the scene that we get in the movie is literally the moment where this stormtrooper hands Luke Skywalker off to Darth Vader. That's really the only time we see this interaction. But we do get a little bit before that interaction, which is like Luke Skywalker coming in willingly, saying, "Hey, I need to talk to the Emperor. I need to talk to Darth Vader. Um, I will come quietly, but just so you know, there are some dead troopers over here. They kind of got into a tussle with whatever." And I just love this interaction because the very end comes up and he overhears the conversation between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker and hears the mention of, "Oh, I know, Father." And you just got to wonder,
Mm-hmm.
like, getting the tea, like, oh man, the story that stormtrooper is going to tell in the break
Yeah.
room. Like, holy shit, guys, Darth Vader has a son and he's Luke Skywalker. Like, I can only imagine what that break room is going to be like.
Yep. I loved it. I thought this was very deep, but it was simple, short, sweet, and to the point. I thought it was a really
Mm-hmm.
well told story. So
Yeah, very much so. And it, like you said, it's very short, so there's not a whole lot else to talk about on that one.
mhm. The next one is actually the comic in the from a certain point of view story. Traditionally always one comic. It is by, and I'm so gonna butcher this. It is by Jarrett Krosakza. I'm
Krozokska?
sorry, Krozakska. Sure, we'll go with that. And it is about Akbar. It is literally called Akbar, and the character it's about is Akbar. Um, and I don't remember what the last panel was, but apparently I had a lot of laughing emojis after it.
Yes, because the
Um,
last panel is it's literally the the entire comic is the inside narration of Akbar leading up to the very famous quote it's a trap. Like that is
Yep.
that is literally all it is. So it's in the midst of the battle, him like needing to command everybody, but it ultimately leads up, and like even the narration says like, oh, and that's when I had to tell everybody, and then you see it in big
Yeah.
letters, it's a trap. So
Yep.
it was very funny. um I could see it being a little deep on some level just because of the narration of it all. But just a cute little comic. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think this is the best thing to do as a comic for this, from a certain point of view, because it could be short and sweet. It doesn't have to be this
Yeah.
long, intricate comic with so many panels and everything else. It's literally, I think, in the actual book, it's probably 2 pages. It's very,
Yeah.
very quick.
Yeah, I did think it was good insight into Akbar's brain because I loved getting Akbar in the Legends novels, and I kind of wish we would get more of him. So,
Yeah.
all right, you're gonna say the next one.
Yes, the next one is The Impossible Flight of Ash Angel, and this is written by Marique uh, Nijkamp, is how I'm going to pronounce it. Nijkamp. Nijkamp. Um, this one I can't. So I'm gonna be completely honest with you. When it comes to a lot of these fighter pilot uh, stories, I do not have the connection to these pilots like you do when it comes to their stories in Alphabet Squadron and all of these other novels that you have read within the Star Wars universe. They, for me, like I'm I'm a stupid guy. Like me, the only way fighter pilots in Star Wars are interesting is when they go zoom, zoom, boom, boom. And none of that really happened until like the very end on most of these. So to me, they weren't the most interesting. So I
Yeah,
forget about a lot of them. And I will say, these are usually the longest ones of this book. They kind of
yeah,
go really deep into detail on the backstory on these.
which is very fair. The pilot involved in this one is Arvel Krynid, who is the he is um yeah, he was Green Leader in Return of the Jedi. Sorry, I had his
Okay.
profile pulled up and
Okay.
I was trying to because it said Green Squadron, and then I was like, no, but I could have sworn I just read something. It was Green Leader, so I had to find that. So this is Green Leader, and he is flying an A-wing, and he ends up uh basically suicide bombing the Executor, so it dives into the Death Star, and the Executor being Darth Vader's Super Star Destroyer, so big boy, right on in. Um, and the only thing I had from this one was crying emojis and clapping emojis and find your purpose, Arvel, yes, sir. That's it. I'm sorry if that's a horrible review on this one, but
I think that I have more thoughts on the next two more than
yes.
anything. Um,
Yeah, because I think these were both in our top slash honorable mentions.
yes, they were. The next one is Ending Protocol by Hannah Witten. This story is about a stormtrooper that has a lot of PTSD in
Hmm.
the Battle of Endor. We learned about a flashback in this stormtrooper's history that in a scenario where they were taking somebody prisoner, her blaster got stolen, and her own pistol was used to kill her uh, uh, commanding officer at the time.
Yep.
Uh, and so she kind of has that looming over her head during this entire story. Um, it does mention a part of Return of the Jedi where they are at the Battle of Endor, and you see that scene where Leia was shot, and in the shoulder, and Han and Leia have that interaction of "I love you, I know," and he moves out of the way and she shoots the stormtrooper or whatever. Um, this stormtrooper in particular, she like acts like she's dead, and she lays there for a very long time until basically the battle is over. Uh, but ultimately, at the end of this story, she turns herself in uh, to the party that is going on in Endor. And of course, things are still kind of hot, and so they interact with her very accordingly. They hold her at gunpoint. They're like, "Hey, stop right there!" They go through all the protocol, and Leia says, "Hey, chill out. The war's over. Go grab a
Yep.
bite to eat. Go hang out. You know, we're one and the same now." So
Yeah.
this stormtrooper is very confused at the open arms that the rebels have kind of entered her in. Uh, but it's a great story. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah. This was one of my honorable mentions. Um, and I do wonder what happens to her, being one of the first Imperial surrenders directly to the rebellion. Um, but I thought this was well written and full of heart, completely. So
Yes.
the final story we are going to talk about is The Last Flight by the one and only fan fiction author turned author herself, Allie Hazelwood. Um, and it is about a pilot called Silent Cott. And I said it in our review. This is one of my top stories. I just love that she was able to take her love for Raylo, turn it into a romance author career, and now she's getting to write for Star Wars officially. I just love that.
Really depressing ending, by the way,
Really depressing ending.
but I liked it. I re-listened to it today.
I had approximately 8 crying emojis in this reaction. Um, and I said I knew this one was gonna break my heart, but I didn't know how bad. Um, just by like I've read some of Allie's work, and so she has happy endings, but also just like the way it was being written, I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. So
Yeah.
that's where I ended up.
It really was a great story. The idea of like a very tragic death at the end, but like met with nothing but smiles, and
Yeah,
it's peaceful, disturbing, but very like it's near and dear to the heart with this story. So I
yeah.
love those type of stories. It gives you so many emotions. So very good on Allie's part. Next week we will start with the story 20 and Out, which was one of my favorites. So be on the lookout for our book club next week. But that is it for this episode of Star Wars Alliance. I want to thank everybody who was here in the YouTube live tonight. Ronnie, Andrew, thank you so much for stopping by. David, keep the emails coming. We thank you greatly for the interactions. Um, we are very curious on what your thoughts were of the first appearance of Thrawn and Ezra. So, anybody and everybody who wants to give us those reactions, you can, of course, email us at Star Wars Alliance, StarWarsAlliance at gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail or text message at the Star Wars Alliance hotline, which is 830-538-4828. Remember, you can text or leave a voicemail to that number. They will be vexed before the airing of the next episode. I will be listening to them. I will be reading them, so that way nothing inappropriate is said. Guys, you gotta be smart about it. But we are lenient on most things, so we would love to hear your reactions. And of course, we have this show right after the next episode appears. So, if you're listening to this and you want to wait until the very next episode to give us your reactions on that one as well. You can always do that. So you can always find me at Fanboy Clay on any and all social media. I have been streaming on Twitch. Andrew, you were there last time, so thank you so much for hanging out with me doing that. And I have been creating a bunch of content over at the Batman News Weekly YouTube channel, so go check that out as well.
Yes, and y'all remember you can always find me on most social media platforms. It's at Slice of Katie. This show you can find on Twitter. It's at Star Wars Alliance without the A in the wars. Very important. Don't forget it. Um, if Twitter disappears, we'll probably go to Blue Sky. Um, that's probably where you can find us next. But always remember you can join the Geekverse Discord and kind of discuss with Clay and I after each episode premieres, and that is a very good way to just kind of follow all the shows, follow Geekverse. Um, and as always, you can check out my personal website, sliceofkatie.com, to kind of see if social media explodes, where we'll be next, kind of thing. And that will be your place to confirm everything. Next week, we are talking Ahsoka episode 7 and any news that may happen to appear at the same time or in the next week. We did also review Tales of Light and Life, so you can check that out. It should be on the feeds as well, same time as this episode. So that is the High Republic short story anthology, taking place between Phase 2, Phase 1, and Phase 3. So you can check out our review for all of the short stories included there. The next book we are going to be reviewing is Crimson Climb. We so that review is scheduled to drop the week of October 10th is when you can expect it.
I haven't started it. Katie has already read 10 chapters of it, and we got another book, and I blinked and Katie finished it. So
I've read 13 chapters. I read
oh,
3
okay.
chapters.
Katie has read 13 chapters, a total of nearly 80 chapters in 0.5 seconds of this week. So, there's that.
Yes, I did read Eye of Darkness in
One
less than 24 hours.
less than 24 hours. I was going to say a day and a half, but that's just giving you way too much credit. So yeah, no. Katie Katie is on a completely new level of reading speed that I have never experienced in my entire life, or have seen an actual human being ever experience in that in my entire life. Uh, Katie is a monster when it comes to reading. I Inhuman, I would also say. So if you guys have the digital copy of this book, the of course ARC, uh, don't come to me for any of your questions because I don't know anything about the book. Katie will be the one that you will have to go to. She knows. She'll probably get this book read like 5 times before I can even get halfway. So yeah, it just had to air that out, Katie. I like you when you texted me, "Hey, you're gonna be upset." I immediately knew. I was like, "There's no way," and you did. You finished the book. That was it. It's insane.
I have had such bad insomnia, guys. It is so bad. And I also had a migraine Monday. So, like, the thing I do when I have migraines is I like go into my room and like close all the curtains and just pick up my Kindle. So that's precisely what I did Monday night. And then I woke up at 5 a.m. Tuesday and was like, well, now what am I gonna do? And so I think grand total, I spent a total of 6 hours reading.
That is insane. Absolutely insane.
All right, y'all. Well, I want to thank everyone again. Thank you for if you're listening or watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. May the force be with you.